Hello there. I find everyone kind of rushes to their reviews with the iPhone when it first comes out, but I wanted to spend a few weeks with it to kind of get to know it better. So if you want to skip to that review, you can go right here. But in the meantime, I've been traveling a lot recently. One of my films has been premiering around the world, and so instead of using one of my normal cinema cameras for my vlog, like the FX3, decided to do it all on the iPhone 14 to get more familiar with it. So here's a little reel recapping the last few weeks of my life. Let's do it.
How do we dance when the music dies? How do we swim when the river runs
This
dry?
place.
What do we say when
I still got this on.
This place I'm staying at is so big, I can literally probably do a 5K run through it. Still running. Holy, what's this?
I just wanna wake up with
Been working out.
forever?
Oh, baby, we're good.
It is not a surprise. I just wanna be next to you forever. Look at the grass on the other side. Just wanna breathe, but you hold me tight. I see the rain fall down from a clear blue sky. So let's stay inside. Let's stay inside. I realize I just wanna wake up with you forever.
So I want to talk today about the features I like on this, but then also how does this camera fit into my ecosystem as a filmmaker and perhaps yours. At first I felt like taking the iPhone just for a few weeks felt a bit unprofessional, but there was one thing that rose to the top about the iPhone, and I guess using any sort of phone like this, and that's just how much fun it was to use. I'm so used to having my cinema camera setups that being able to just pull this out, jump in the pool, and especially get those ProRes shots, which I must say are getting a lot better. The first ProRes iteration kind of felt like it was just ProRes and no improvement on the quality of the image. But if you're looking at these images here of Lewis in the morning, they're pretty nice. And that's what I'm finding with the iPhone now, is there's more and more opportunities for me to incorporate it into my storytelling. But let's go over the features that I've been impressed with and a few that I'm not. First off, like I mentioned, the underwater is just so fun. All of these shots you're seeing, I never had a case. I was actually just throwing the phone sometimes on the bottom of the pool and diving over top of it, leaving it down there for minutes at a time. Now you gotta follow what iPhone says. I think it's 6 meters up to 30 minutes or 6 feet perhaps. I'm not condoning throwing your phone at the bottom of the pool. You might need some insurance for that, and we'll talk about that in a minute with our sponsor. But for me, the two things I love about shooting on this is the freedom and ease. Just being out there on the kayak with my dad, being able to pull the phone out, get a quick shot underwater, throw it back into my lap, was just so much fun. He's dying to say a corny joke.
No. Memories aren't counted in hours, they're counted in moments, and it doesn't get much better than this.
There you go. Thank you for showing some restraint.
Whatever you want to cut, you can cut.
One of the more fun features on the new 14 is the action mode. Me and Lewis tested it out while we were running. And now it does crop, as you can see here, but it is very smooth. You can see me running around here with Lewis, and I actually did a test where I held my 14 and grabbed my 13 and did them at the same time. And you'll just see how much smoother the 14 is. There is a compromise on resolution, and I'm sure in next iterations of the iPhone that'll be improved upon, but man, it's smooth. It gives you that gimbal quality movement just in the iPhone without any external stabilization. Now, cinematic mode hasn't been improved, 4K at 24, but I don't tend to use cinematic mode all the time. I still prefer natural bokeh that comes from an actual optical lens. But when you dial back that f-stop to kind of that f.56 range, it starts looking more natural, and it's actually a fun tool to use sometimes if you want to blur out the background. But I'm also finding, like this shot of Lewis here, that I don't need cinematic mode all that much. These lenses are getting more shallow in their depth of field, and so you're actually able to achieve that cinematic look without having to go to cinematic mode. But I would say one of the most impressive things, I am genuinely impressed with this, is the macro capabilities of this camera. You can just get so close to objects with this. You can see the stick here. I literally had it touching the lens, and you're able to get all of those details. Really amazing to know that there's pretty much no limit to the near focus capabilities of the camera. And that's just it with the iPhone, is you don't really have to think much when you're shooting on it. You kind of pull it out and capture what's in front of you and then put it away. I'll see if I can make it through this maze of trees. Hey, wasn't expecting that. That in the moment energy. It feels real. It feels like something that actually happened. Where sometimes when you shoot on a cinema line camera, it has that other world feeling that it doesn't feel like real life. It feels larger than life. That's kind of the fun thing with the iPhone, is it really does feel grounded in reality. And I think that's kind of the application that you want to use it for. The slow motion still is what it is. It's up to 240 frames at 1080. It is fairly compressed. The 4K 60 is quite nice if you want to slow that down to 24. But you can see all these shots down here in the pool. It's still some pretty impressive images. Which brings me to our sponsor today, PPA, the Professional Photographers of America. You probably heard me talking about them in the past, and they're a brand I do like to partner with because they provide a real service. It's an incredible community of over 34,000 photographers. And not only does PPA help you with training and working through legal contracts if you're a photographer, but they also provide a bunch of other services, such as camera gear insurance, up to $15,000. But then they also have their indemnification trust. And this is when something goes wrong on set. We've been there. You've deleted a memory card or a camera didn't record properly. PPA will help jump in and work through this problem with you. They're like an older brother or a dad who wants to come in and give you the right advice and help navigate that. They can help you with the costs or the losses if that's affected your project to that extent. And they can even help you with direct intervention if you have an unhappy client. This is an incredible service. I don't know anyone else offering this online. There's already been tens of thousands of amazing creators and photographers who've joined PPA and who use it daily. So you want to check them out. I put a link below in the description which gives you $25 off for a PPA membership. Now, my biggest complaint about the phone is the color space that this works in. So often, Adobe and even Resolve, I find, struggles with the color space that the iPhone has. You end up having footage that looks overblown and never seems to look as beautiful as it does on the screen. Now, there's workarounds about this by changing the color space. You just wish the technology out there all spoke to each other a bit easier, because it never seems to look as beautiful as it does on the screen unless you really mess around with the colors. And in the end though, as you've seen from this video, it is manageable. It's just strange to me that all these manufacturers don't get together and agree on just a few color spaces where there's 709 or there's HLG 200, and it just goes on forever, and you end up having to finesse everything to make it work in your timeline. And one other quick note that I would say is criticism of the iPhone, and that's the low light. It's still really impressive for photos, but I do find for video, if you're just not pumping enough light onto the camera, it does still have that low compression noise. Like, you're even seeing some of it happening over here. And I would say this is a fairly bright room. So it's just managing where you're shooting and adding enough light to a shot like this now. You know, we'll get more detail. But I suppose that's just the trade-off of having such a easy to use tiny little camera with a tiny sensor, is you're gonna have some difficulties exposing in the shadows. My final thoughts on the iPhone 14 is, if you really do want the best camera system available on a phone right now, in my experience, it would be what's on the Pro Max, which is what I'm using on the iPhone 14. I think every filmmaker should be thinking about how they're using a phone in their storytelling, just because it's so easy to pull out and hit record. It's like an action camera that has the editing software on the screen on the back, but it's so much more than that when you actually have all three lenses. I've already begun sneaking in shots in my feature films with iPhones up against cinema cameras, and I just expect myself to be doing that more and more in the future. But when I do want to use an iPhone for storytelling, I kind of want to keep it in that world because it really does have that in the moment look. That is quite fun to see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions. I kind of want to go make an entire film just shooting macro because it is so crazy how close you can get with this thing. But appreciate you guys watching this. I'm headed to London this week, so if you're around, hope to see you there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.